Well, everybody wants to go home on the range, and we're about to do that. I'm joined by Luke Turner from Turner Seed, and we're going to be talking about wildflower planting, native grass planting, cover crops, a whole bunch of other great topics for gardeners big and small. and Luke, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Fall is time for planting wildflowers, and many people are also interested in larger scale restoration involving grasses. Let's talk about the timing of the planting, because they don't go together, right? They're not at the same time.
The fall is a great time to get wildflowers in the ground. Things like bluebonnets, they actually sprout September, October, and so it's very important that they get in. For a lot of the species, you can plant them later, but getting them in early can help break dormancy and give you more success.
Right. So on the wildflowers, so getting a good early start is really important. On the grasses, this is something I just learned from you, is that it's really preferable to wait a while, right?
What you don't want to happen is you don't want to get those grasses in the ground too late and not have enough time for them to establish themselves as perennial.
Okay.
There's a lot of energy storage that goes on before frost, if you have frost. And
so what's the ideal time for the grasses?
Up north where we are, we like to wait until December, January. Maybe we get a few weeks if you're in the southern part of the state, but winter really is the first time we like to plant if we can.
Yeah, I liked what you said about giving the plants enough time to really build up kind of a store of energy. I tend to think of native grasses being so tough you can kind of sow them and walk away, but that's not really the case.
It depends. They are natives, so they are smart. If you mess up and plant them too early, a lot of the times they will know to wait, but you know, you get weird weather, sometimes they can get tricked, and if that happens, you may be replanting again in the spring.
There are many benefits. One of the things I love is you have a lot of different kind of customers, if you will. You know, there are benefits for deer, there are benefits for human, there are benefits for the soil itself, really, right?
Yes, sir.
You know, so mixing it up is important.
We think so. Yeah, you have a lot of different advantages to having wildflowers in Forbes period, be it soil improvement, cover cropping, wildlife, natural beauty, pushing out weeds.
Yeah.
It's a mixed bag.
I think it's, there's a lot of movement in Texas right now for restoration of rangeland, to bring the native grasses back, to bring the flowers back, etc. And one of the things I heard, and I thought this kind of blew me away, is that an acre of prairie land here in Texas can sequester as much carbon as an acre of rainforest. So if you use the right plant mix, you can really be of benefit not just to the soil, but also to the atmosphere, which I thought was kind of amazing.
I'm sure that's right. Yeah, I mean, we've seen the water runoff trials where how much water gets held whenever you have live active root growth in soil. So I wouldn't doubt that at all.
And you talk about water benefits, and that's really significant. I've heard about people who have done this, and what had been muddy stock tanks are now clear because the roots of all these plants are, filtering the water and, really clarifying and taking pollutants and other things out.
Sure.
So there's a lot of benefit there, and also just holding the topsoil in place, which is a concern to any rancher or farmer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a little bit more about the cover crops, because this is a topic I don't know much about. Don't think about crops on that kind of scale that much. But let's talk about your favorite varieties of cover crops and why these are of benefit to the landowners.
Sure. This time of year in the fall, your cool season legumes and really just any cool season legumes are really important. They're going to be giving you that live active root growth through the fall, winter, and into the spring. They're going to be putting carbon into the ground by growing roots and sequestering carbon, like you said. And then come early spring, some very early for some species, they're going to be giving you those first blooms and providing pollinator opportunities before a lot of other options are really available.
Right. And when we talk about these cover crops and legumes, vetch is one. Tell me some of the others.
Sure. Vetch, winter peas, those are two really big ones. A lot of clovers. We have a lot of clovers, and those are really some of your good bloomers early on. And then, your wildflowers. I mean, they're not, a lot of them aren't growing, but a few of them are. And those guys, they're helping out.
Yeah. A lot of people are interested in the wildflowers, not just because of the aesthetic. It's because they really provide benefit, and in particular to pollinators. And people, it's important to plant and have in mind that that you want the bloom to be progressive, that it will bloom over time. Tell me a little bit about some strategies for achieving that.
Whenever we're designing a pollinator mix, we want to have in mind when those blooms are expected to be coming through, and kind of stack our species so that we can maximize the amount of time that we have blooms and keep those pollinators some active nectar to be working with. And so, using your species, and when you think that the blooms should be coming in, of course they change, year to year.
Sure.
That's kind of that strategy.
Okay. And, one thing that I often talk about with homeowners, but it's equally important with, somebody who's doing restoration on a grand scale on a ranch, is some kind of soil prep, right? You want to prepare the sites for the seeding.
Absolutely. However you plant any seed, it needs to be coming into contact with freshly disturbed soil. So if you're going to be broadcast seeding, you're disturbing your soil. A firm seed bed is very helpful. So after disturbing, firming up your seed bed, and then depending on the size of the seed, planting at the correct depth. With a lot of these wildflowers and pollinators, the surface planting is plenty good enough.
Okay.
You don't want to get them too deep. That's one of the biggest faults we can find with fields that don't work, is planting seed too deeply.
Okay, and you talk about disturbing the soil. Tell me about some techniques for that.
Sure. So old school, big farm was plowing. Chain harrow dragging works well. And then if you want to be less, destructive, they have a lot of good no-till options now that still allows the seed to be contacting freshly disturbed soil, but doesn't kick up weed seed and create too much erosion in the process.
Okay. And when you referenced leveling the soil or flattening it or applying pressure, how do you accomplish that?
With a roller is normally the no-till drills. They roll it after they plant. But if you're disturbing, broadcasting, and then rolling, you can get a roller, or even driving over it with equipment is enough to firm up the ground and give you a good firm seed bed.
Okay. I would think this next issue would be one that's tricky for some large-scale folk. It's less tricky for a home gardener, and that is keeping the planting area appropriately moist. What's the best strategy for that, and why is it so important?
Oh, well, if you're farming or planting dry land, I guess you're at the mercy of nature. But if you have a garden or a place where you're growing these things, we always say dry cold kills, wet cold doesn't. There's a lot of reasons why that is. Probably the biggest one is wet soil is a better insulator, and it just gives a lot better opportunity for things going through the winter.
Yeah. Well, those first few months are so essential for any plant. I always think about getting the plant over the transplant, and then getting the plant over its first Texas summer. Any tips that you provide to your customers talking about dealing with the heat, dealing with lack of rain?
Well, once again, it depends if you're irrigating or not. Choosing species that are drought tolerant, if you're in one of those areas, is probably the best thing you can do. Otherwise, you got to water it.
Okay. When you talk about species, what are some of the go-to plants that you recommend for your customers?
Wildflower-wise, your most hardy species, your prairie coneflower, Mexican hat, Indian blanket, stuff that you see on the side of the road.
Right.
And things that you see locally. I always ask customers whenever they want to put a mix together, what do you see locally? Because that's the first step in knowing what's going to grow there. And then if we
point.
want to be adventurous, we can dig in and see if we think it'll work there or not.
Okay. And on the grass side, what are your favorite things to recommend there?
Oh, native wise, you know, the
Got
big,
a lot of choices.
big
I
yeah,
know.
there's a bunch. Bluestem, Sideoats, blue grama, switchgrass. I mean, there's a bunch of options.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of options, one of the places people can learn about all these options is on your website.
Yes, sir.
Which I understand is just really beautifully orchestrated and has lots of good content about all these different species, right?
Well, thank you. We appreciate that
Yeah.
compliment. It took a long time.
And, well, you know, websites are a hard thing to do, but if people are interested in learning about not just the plants, but I would assume that some of the techniques as well.
Yes, sir.
They can go to your site. It's been a genuine pleasure visiting with you. Thanks for sharing, coming down from the ranch
Yes, sir.
in a way, and visiting with us and sharing some of your expertise out on the prairies of Texas.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, and coming up next, it's time for a death.